So my big advice would be don't get caught up in the frills of a brand, the logo, the typeface, the color. In essence, solve the big idea of who you are, why you matter in the world. And once you solve that big idea, then express that through the visual and verbal elements of your branding.
Today we're talking about the rebrand of This Is Money, how we took an old, well-known brand, My Millennial Money, and changed it. We changed the design, we changed the name, we changed all the other shows. This is work, this is investing, this is property, and we rebranded everything. I'm talking with Jason Knight, who is our brand genius, who worked with myself and Shell Johnson, who's also on the episode today.
Where we actually started was talking about a Glen James brand and trying to solve the My Millennial Money brand. So we did start in this position of like, hey, we're trying to do a couple of things. But for this particular brand, it was very challenging because we were ditching the name. We were essentially not heroing the logo, and we weren't even heroing colors. So it's like, what are we actually building this brand on?
Yeah, and I think as well, it was so unique because our core business is podcasting. And a lot of the time in design land, you're like, what can we make this website look like? What can we make all this? And I remember saying, I'm like, we need to do this so the artwork looks good and build it backwards. Like, that's all I care about. So if you go to our website, which Jace put together, on that first page, you will see the black and the almost creamy color, which is the color of This Is Money.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of elements. So first, I just want to recap some of the foundations because this was the challenge beyond a challenge. So essentially, we're heroing the secondary item and not the main item. Nearly every other company heroes their name, their logo, or at least a color reference to them. So instantly, all of those, norms were out. And in your particular case, we're heroing the subcategory, which is the podcaster or the podcast show. So, I mean, let's think of it as Toyota or something like, we're heroing the product and not the actual brand behind it. We're heroing the basketball shoe and not actually the brand behind it. And so, honestly, there was a point where I was like, this is borderline impossible. Like, how is this going to actually land? And it wasn't until, again, the fluid process of bouncing ideas between you and my team that I came across a graphic image that sort of had square colors in it. And all of a sudden, my idea landed on growth and expansion. And this was through our workshop. It also was revealed that is really the essence of who... every show is about growth, growing your audience, growing your team. And it's like, wow, okay, so maybe we hit upon a foundational idea of growth, and through this growth color reference and also visual reference, we can link a layout that so the layout for all the podcasts looks the same, even though they've got different people, they've got different colors, but the layout is the same. And so once this big idea landed essentially in my head and then got approved through your team, we actually had a foundation to work on. And that's when people started getting excited of like, oh, I start to see this. I start to see that this is money and this is work and this is property start to land as hero products under a background of or a subtle background. Yeah, so the brand's subtle background is actually a black and almost a beige or a tan. So the brand of This Is Money is sort of a sub behind the product, the bold product itself.
Shell, how many iterations of, different vibes do you think that you saw and commented? And
no, we saw quite a lot of iterations, but I think Jace, you took all of the disparate ideas, and there were so many, that Pinterest board with all of our beautiful, colourful ideas, and went, okay, cool. It's really amazing to me that of all the bright, crazy colours, we landed on beige, black, and white. And then each podcast is so bright. It's really funny. We got Anyway, I think, this is probably the most important part. The visual identity is really important, but the second part that was super important was the tone of voice, because at the end of the day, this is a podcast and all we do is talk, and all that is tone of voice. So like, how do we make sure that the whole brand identity has a really clear tone of voice? Because that's what we do. We're talkers. We're professional talkers.
A lot of like the bedrock of it, and I'm reading on the website now, the front page, it has this is money, and a scrolling this is money, property, work, investing, business, and then money podcast, simpler, easier, understandable. And then there's a big statement, discover a new relationship with money and live life on your own terms. So they were kind of the vibe that I kind of wanted for everything that we do. And
yeah, you're bang on, Glenn. Yeah, you summed up exactly the process. Yeah, so I got a little visual process that it's like, first of all, we throw spaghetti on the wall. Like we get all these great ideas out on the table, and that's a big part of our workshop where we listen. And then after we listen, we start to sift. We essentially try to find like ideas. And once we find these like ideas, then all of a sudden the foundations come about. But you're right. Big part of your brief was, hey, podcast is hero. Secondary is everything else. And even with the tone of voice, we ran past like, hey, it's a bit Bendigo Bank. It's a bit Old Spice. It's a bit jokes. You're like, how do we combine this into a tone of voice? So rather than just writing website copy that is nice, it's like, hey, we need to sprinkle in jokes every sort of like third paragraph. We need to throw a joke in here.
There's a couple of things that really stood out to me in this process. I think if you own a business, but you might also do this for your personal brand, and you might just have this vibe of like, I think my brand needs a bit of a glow up. If you're listening and you're thinking, I think my brand needs a bit of a glow up, I don't think it reflects the future me. I think it reflects a past me. And I think that's partly what we found, Glenn. Like, you'd been doing this for like 7 years, and you're like, that was relevant for that period of time when we launched, but it's maybe a past me, and the future me is going in a different direction. If you have that kind of sense of like, maybe I would call it incongruency. So you have this feeling of like, what I'm previously known for is not what I want to be known for in the future. That's like your kind of trigger point to go, oh, I need a little brand redesign or refresh or total reinvention, which is what we've gone through, like complete and utter reinvention. If you feel that incongruency, that's the signal of like, maybe there's that refresh or reinvention. I think a really good place to start, which is what we did, is we went back to our core values as a business, and we've got some really beautiful core values. And one of them is like, we really challenge directly and care deeply about our people. And that means we want them to grow. We want our listeners to grow. So go back to your core values. And then the next thing I would do, if you're listening, you think I might need a personal brand reset or a business brand reset, is also think about, what do you want to be known for in the future? And write down those words, like get some words on a page. For us, growth has always been so important, like growth, fun, like entertainment, but also like we want to have a life-changing impact on people. Like, Glenn, I know that's part of your mission as a person, like you want to change people's lives through financial education, and you do that every day. So like, write down what you want to be known for in the future versus what you're known for now. And when you see the comparison, that's where you start to shape out. And I think that's like the real foundational starting place. And then you take it to someone like Jason, you go, okay, here's my raw thoughts. Here's my weird ideas. And I've got a mood board, despite what Glenn says, of what I want it to look like. That's kind of what I would do if I was going to restart this process and work with an amazing designer like Jace to actually help you bring it to life, because people think that they can do this stuff in Canva and they can't.
It wasn't just like Jason do a logo, and it's just far from that, because it's kind of like when people say, oh, should I invest in VDHG or IVV? It's like, well, hang on. We can't be in product mode at the moment. We need to go back, and we need to go back and look at the goals, look at the foundations. What are you aiming to achieve? And a lot of the toing and froing in the early days, there may have been 4 different mood boards. It wasn't, there was bugger all logos. It wasn't podcast artwork. It was like, do you like this vibe or this vibe? Do you like these colors or those colors? And it was almost like that sieve, just prospecting for gold, just shaking the sieve. And then when we really got to this is the absolute vibe that we want, then you could start to actually do the designy stuff, right?
The purpose of a brand is much like an identity of a person. And people get so caught up in a typeface or a font, and they get so caught up in a logo, and neither of them are worth the time to talk about. And this is coming from me, a designer that spent 20 plus years studying and perfecting those elements. So for me, the purpose of a brand is to understand the vibe, the feeling of that. Once you meet someone at a party or shake their hand, you get a vibe. You get a persona. You start to understand them, and that is the essential part of a brand: is to understand the foundations of who is your audience, where is the business going, and what is the brand solve or results of the brand. And once we tie those three things together, which is really where I start in my workshop, I really try to understand who is the audience, where is the brand or business going in the next 5+ years, and then we start to tie in what is the brand style, what is the copy style, what is the I do this humorous thing of the archetypes or a newspaper exercise where we really try to sketch out what would be the headline, what would be the whole reason for you showing up to somebody. And I think once we get these foundations right in a brand, then that is the power, that is the genius that you then get to share with the rest of the world. So my big advice would be, don't get caught up in the frills of a brand, the logo, the typeface, the color. In essence, solve the big idea of who you are, why you matter in the world. And once you solve that big idea, then express that through the visual and verbal elements of your branding.
So in 5 years' time, if I said, Jace, I need a refresh, because we're not changing necessarily the vibe. And, in the rebrand, I've not changed any way I've done content. It's the same listeners, it's the same content. What would you look at to refresh? Just a slight tweak to colors and photos, font, dare I say?
It definitely wouldn't be a go back to the drawing board almost as we did. It would be, what is the vibe of your audience and what are they into, and are we still hitting that mark with our visuals and verbals? So it might be a change to the copy language style, and it might be a change to the photography or visual style, but really it's almost like a filter change rather than going back to the drawing board. And that is what you'll see with the big epic brands of the world, whether it's Apple or Nike or whoever you want to take. It's their tweaks rather than back to the drawing board, because they have established their foundation. And I think you're right. It usually takes about 7 years, 5 to 7 years, for a business to really understand who they are, what their wins are, what they're crap at. And that's when a business goes from good to great. And that's really who I work with, people that are really wanting to go into that authority space and really own a segment of the market. For me, I often ask my clients this one question, and that is what is the one thing out of the whole process that shifted the needle the most? What is the one item that we did together that really made a difference for you?
I think actually formalizing what we're about and our actual business and our community, because a lot of the time, every time I pick up a microphone, I want to be practical to people, I want to be entertaining, or I want to be valuable. And for so many years, we were doing our thing, and we'd never really had a formalized, this is what we do, this is what we're about. And so if you go to the website, thisis.money, you get a real sense of everything our business is about. And that's been really valuable for me to formalize what we're doing and how we do it. The language hasn't really changed or anything like that, the way I deliver content and the way that the hosts deliver content, but we're now kind of grown up and have a brand that we can grow for the future. So yeah.
Yeah, a nice byproduct of doing working on your brand and your brand identity is essentially the internal and external like communication. Like it solidifies how you talk to your staff. It solidifies how you attract new people because it really sifts, as you said before, it really sifts down to the core message, the core beliefs, and once we call them out, that's actually what really enrolls and up levels people into your product.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those businesses, like, you will have more confidence when you've got a good brand behind you. You'll be able to charge more. You'll be able to do better work because of that confidence that your brand gives you in the marketplace.